From Senator Lindsey Graham's town hall meeting on Saturday to terrorism to healthcare, 1st Congressional District candidate Tom Perez sits down with me one-on-one for this edition of Quintin's Close-Ups. Let me turn you to Washington, D.C. again, because obviously you said this, quote, "While I initially supported AHCA as I support POTUS, I think that this is a wise move. We may have one shot at this. Let's get it right." So where did they go wrong in this situation?
Oh man, we gotta back up. So, well, for starters, I think that they were moving a little too fast.
Okay.
And I understand, I understand the sense of urgency. We want to make sure we get this done. And there's some concern that in the 2018 elections, we might lose a couple of seats in the House and the Senate, the Republicans, and so we want to make sure that we can pass this bill before that happens. And so there was a sense of urgency, but none of the bills that I saw were perfect. And there's problems with all the bills, and there's three. There was the House bill brought forth by Paul Ryan, the AHCA.
Right.
There was the Rand Paul bill that brought out in the Senate.
Right.
And then the Senator Cassidy out of Louisiana brought forth, called it the Patient Freedom Act.
Okay.
And none of those bills really none of them repealed and replaced. They were all kind of changes to Obamacare, the changes to the Affordable Care Act.
Okay.
They were replacement bills that took the place of. Now, I heard an argument, well, that's kind of inherent that if you're replacing something, you're also repealing it because it's not going to be there anymore. Okay, there was a political problem in that a lot of people wanted to see a bill that repealed it. They wanted Obamacare gone.
Okay.
There are a lot of people, I don't want to say a lot, but there's a significant number of very vocal people in the GOP who want to eradicate Barack Obama's administration. They want to completely erase anything that he's done, which includes obviously Obamacare. It's his landmark legislation.
Right.
And so they want to see nothing left of it there. And so that was the problem with the Senator Cassidy bill, because in truth, I think that was probably the best option. The Senator Cassidy bill, because what it did is it gave more rights to states. It was all about states' rights. It said it gave a what as far as what the health care in each state had to comply with, but allowed the states to determine for themselves how they were going to run their health care within their state. The problem with it was more political than practical, in my opinion, because it allowed a state, if they wanted to keep Obamacare, that they could. And so by definition, that was not a repeal of Obamacare. People wanted to repeal Obamacare, so when it got put forth, it was pretty much dead on arrival because it allowed people to keep Obamacare. But if you think about it, we in the GOP, we tend to get kind of bogged down into the issues. And we can debate the issues all day long, but the issues don't define who we are as a people or as a party. There's one common ideal that makes a Republican a Republican, and that is freedom. And Republicans favor freedom, and we're willing to accept any quality of outcome in a free market.
Okay.
Democrats or liberals favor the equality of outcome, and they're willing to sacrifice their freedom or a specific freedom in order to achieve it. In other words, liberals tend to want the government to come in and artificially level the playing field through legislation and regulation. The Republicans, we say, or conservatives, we say that the government is not there to do that. It's there to defend the shores, deliver the mail, get out of the way, kind of a thing, just to defend the faith, provide for the common defense, and just kind of let the states run themselves, so to speak. And there's opposite ends of the spectrum and a lot of gray in the middle. But here's the challenge with freedom being your ideal is that you have to respect the freedom of everybody.
Okay.
And by freedom we mean rights. There's inalienable human rights and the Bill of Rights as set forth in our Constitution. We all have the same rights. The people we like, the people we dislike, the people we agree with, the people we disagree with, even the Democrats and the Republicans. We all have the same rights. And so if a state like California, for example, they want to keep Obamacare, in theory, if we're going to abide by our ideal of freedom, California should have the freedom to keep Obamacare, as long as they're willing to pay for it. And it's not going to cost South Carolina any money.
Okay.
So if they want to pay for it, they want to keep Obamacare, under the states' rights, they should have the right to do that. If the people of South Carolina, California vote to keep Obamacare, and they want to keep Obamacare, and they want to fund it under their state, it should be allowed to do that. In South Carolina, we should have a right to have our health care plan the way it is. And that's, in my mind, what the Republican ideal is. And so that's why I liked the Senator Cassidy bill of the three. But be that as it may, that's not what we got, because it allowed Obamacare to stay on the books, and that was not going to happen. So it got just kind of tossed aside. So did the Rand Paul bill. It kind of got tossed aside as well. And then what they put forth was the AHCA. There were a lot of problems with the AHCA. What Congressman Perez would have done, obviously I have the benefit of hindsight, but in the Budget Committee, I would have liked to have seen an amendment put forth. And no one did that. There was a lot of negotiation and argument about the bill in the committee and then on the floor, but no one took the time to write out an amendment and said, hey, these are all the things I don't like and this is what I want to fix. Let's put out an amendment to the HCA and vote on it. That never happened. And that's kind of, to call out my opponent, Congressman Sanford, that's kind of his modus operandi. Congressman Sanford, he just votes no. He very rarely puts forth an amendment or puts forth a solution to fix things that he doesn't like in a bill. He'll just vote no. Now I can send my 6-year-old daughter up to D.C. to vote no or present, but we need someone from this district who's going to lead, who's going to provide solutions to problems. And if I would have been in that situation, I would have offered an amendment to try to fix the problems that were inherent with the bill.
What is that amendment in your mind?
Well, so one of the big problems was that it raised the premiums for our seniors.
Okay.
And that was a big problem with it. I think that what it came down to, that was pretty much the biggest problem. And also it left about, I think, what did the CBO say, something like 100 million people without insurance. I would have tried to address those are the major problems that we had with the bill. Those are probably at least the key issues that I can think of off the top of my head that I would like to address.
Sure.
But I'll tell you this, one of the problems was a lack of transparency with the people. We saw what the AHCA looked like going in. It's on Paul Ryan's website. Right. But we never saw what it looked like coming out of the Budget Committee. We still haven't seen what the final version was going through the House, because it never got voted on. So there's no record of it. At least I haven't seen it. Right. If someone has it, please send it to me. I haven't seen what the final resolution was that eventually never got a vote. There was a lot of news coverage and a lot of tweets and people saying this is what's in the bill, this is what's not in the bill, but we really don't know what the final tally was. I mean, from what we understand, the final argument was what they couldn't get past was there's certain parts of coverage like the emergency care and things of that nature. There's certain basic coverages that Paul Ryan's side of the House wanted to keep in, and the Freedom Caucus wanted out, and so they could never work past that, and so they never ever come to a solution. But that's what we've heard in the media. We really don't know. We haven't really seen the final bill.
What is your I keep hearing about the Freedom Caucus. Mm-hmm. What is your definition of the Freedom Caucus right now?
The definition of Freedom Caucus, well, it's a group, a club, for lack of a better word, and there are a lot of caucuses in the House. There's last I counted was about 364 different caucuses.
Wow.
And they do different things. Some of them are like the Cancer Caucus that work toward funding cancer research, and some of them are they're the Whiskey Caucus. I wonder who's in that, might be in that caucus. That'd be a fun caucus to be in. So yeah, there's all these different caucuses for different groups, and I mean, one could argue that it kind of goes toward our fractured nature, and that we're all these different groups, and if you're not in our club, then you're not cool enough. And going back to my definition of conservatism,
sure.
You kept hearing in the media, and this is something that I kind of had a problem with, that the Freedom Caucus was being described as these ultra-conservatives. And one of the problems that I see in our party, and I keep calling out my own party for it, but I look at my party like my family.
Okay.
my kids, I can call out my kids if they're doing something wrong, but if someone else calls out my kids, then it's on.
Right.
Okay, so I can talk about my party because I'm in my party. I'm a executive committee member in Charleston County Republican Party, so I can talk about my party. But someone else talks about my party, we got a problem. But during the campaign, during the 2016 campaign, Rand Paul kept saying, he would get up on the stump during the debate. He said, I'm the only true fiscal conservative because I'm the only one who's willing to cut the defense budget. Okay. Then you had the other 15 or 16 guys say, no, you're not conservative because you want to cut the defense budget and we need to rebuild our military. And so it seems like there's this list of issues that you have to be on the right side of in order to be a conservative. And you got to check these boxes off.
Right.
And whoever can check the most boxes is the most conservative.
Okay.
But those, going back to my earlier argument, those are the issues. Those don't define who we are. And back to the Rand Paul example. So Rand Paul can say, you're not conservative because you don't want to cut the defense budget. Someone else can say, well, you're not conservative because you do want to cut the defense budget. So a lot of these issues, this laundry list,
Right.
they conflict against each other in a lot of cases. So no one can be fully conservative because you can't check all the boxes. And what I would argue is that you're conservative if you favor freedom over equality. And you're willing to respect the freedom of everyone else. And it's very difficult to do that. It's a simple definition, but it's a difficult thing to implement. It's like dunking a basketball. You know, the idea of dunking a basketball is a very simple concept. You grab the ball, you jump up, and you dunk it in the hoop. But for a 5'8" white guy, it's very difficult for me to accomplish, right? I can't get there. But in that same thing with conservatism, it's a very simple definition. Oh, favor freedom, sure, yeah. But it's difficult to implement because you have to be willing to say that I respect your freedom and his freedom and her freedom, and we can disagree on the issues. We can sit here and have a civil discourse or debate about that, but I'm not going to infringe upon your freedom and your rights, even though you disagree with me. And there's a lot of people out there who, when I give this definition of freedom as a definition for conservatism, they say, yeah, I agree with that. But a lot of people, they'll say, I respect your freedom as long as you agree with me. I respect your rights as long as you agree with how I want you to exercise those rights. And that's not how freedom works.
Okay.
And and that's why I say we can start coming to this common ground. So that's I guess one thing I would say about the Freedom Caucus is not necessarily the caucus's fault.
Okay.
They have their issues. They're a group of people that have common opinions on the issues, and that's fine. They can get together. But to say these people are more conservative than these people, I don't get on board with that. Okay. Because what is your definition of conservatism? And again, going back to CPAC, I lived at CPAC in February,
Right.
and they had this big map of the United States, and they ranked each state as being the most conservative or least conservative. And South Carolina is actually ranked like in the low 40s.
Wow.
And I thought we were more conservative than that, but they said no, and it's based on the different laws we've passed from the state legislature's perspective. So it's really calling out our state legislature. And I thought, well, what's their definition of conservatism? How do they define conservatism? And what this group up there, and I'm not going to say their name because I'm not trying to call anybody out,
Right.
but what is their definition of conservatism? And all these different little groups, this foundation and that foundation, they'll give an award for being the most conservative. Okay, based on what? Based on your opinion of what it means to be a conservative, and what is that definition? Going back to that list, you're pro this and anti that,
Right.
pro this and anti that. Well, that makes you a conservative in my book. Well, what if I disagree? And so, what if I don't think that's conservative? And so then we get into this, oh, well, so-and-so said, this talking head on Fox News said, oh, this guy's conservative. Okay, what makes his opinion any more valid than mine or yours or anybody else's? And so that's why I like to kind of do away with the laundry list.
Okay.
We can put those in a box called the issues, and we can debate the issues and talk about the issues, but I think we need to start concentrating on coming together around the common ideal that makes us all conservative, that makes us all Republicans, and that is respecting freedom.
Describe to me in one word, Judge Neil Gorsuch will be.
The next, in one word,
Yes, sir.
justice.
Okay.
I think he'll be confirmed. There's talk about a filibuster.
Right.
Listening to Senator Graham, he said that he's willing to vote to change the rules to allow the president to do what every president has done for the past 200 years.
Sure.
Neil Gorsuch is incredibly qualified for this position. He's had 2,700 cases, I think, and only one overturned.
Right.
Before he was Donald Trump's Supreme Court nominee,
Right.
everybody on both sides loved this guy and thought they may disagree with him on a political spectrum, which that's something I don't understand, and how a judges are graded politically. I think the law should be blind to politics.
Okay.
But anyway, that's another discussion for another day about Neil Gorsuch. Yeah, like I said, before he was Donald Trump's nominee, there's a lot of divisiveness in politics right now. If Barack Obama would have nominated him, he'd have sailed through. But Donald Trump nominates him, and so he's getting a lot of pushback. And some of that, I think, might be tit for tat, and the fact that Merrick Garland wasn't confirmed or didn't get a hearing. There's some precedent for why he didn't get a hearing, going back to 1992. Vice President Biden basically said the same thing, that if you're within a year of a presidential election, we should hold off and let the next president nominate. But there's some hurt feelings there, I think, from the left. But I think maybe I'm hopefully optimistic that we'll see a confirmation from Neil Gorsuch, because he is unbelievably qualified.
Okay. Well, Tom Perez, thank you so much for your time. I really, really appreciate this.
Thank you for having me.
Anytime.
It's a great time.
Likewise.